Hi. This video is the first in a short series leading up to a larger video that I'm working on. The script is adapted from that video's. If that video's out, you should just watch that one instead. In this series, I'll be breaking down some of the core symbols and themes of double exposure. The current discussion surrounding the game is primarily negative, and I'd like to offer some of my analysis as a way to hopefully spark some more positive engagement. I'll be starting here with the Nebula, as it was the thing that got me to start digging deep into this game. We're gonna look at this first scene, and we're gonna see how it ripples out throughout the rest of the game. Full spoilers, of course, and this video assumes you have knowledge of the game's plot and characters. So if you haven't seen or played the game, then you're gonna be missing a lot of information. Anyway, I hope you find this as interesting as I do. The game opens from inside a building, a bowling alley, called the Nebula. Max breaks in, light gleaming through the doorway, and Safi follows her inside. Max's first line in double exposure is,
"There's a lot you don't know about me."
This is basically the game's thesis statement. Almost every single character is playing off of this idea. Most of the plot is too, actually. The game's first trading card badge on Steam is Two-Headed Wolf. This might be related to a concept in Native American spirituality, primarily attributed to the Cherokee. Inside of everyone is two wolves. Oh my god, wolf brothers? One being the voice of good and one the voice of evil. Or alternatively, one being positive drives and one being negative. You can see in the artwork that one head is angry and evil and the other is plain and expressionless. The game seems to take a fair bit from Native American culture. Amanda is part Cherokee. She hosts Native artists' work in her bar, and she mentions it plenty of times online. The prominent owl seems to be reflecting the interpretation of omens of death or spiritual protectors. They also are seen as messengers between life and the afterlife, which makes sense considering the events of the game and Max's role in it all. Max is an owl, dictated by the pin on her coat. The owl that appears could either be an omen for Safi's death or a messenger of prophecy like the butterfly. It's also a Twin Peaks reference.
The owls are not what they seem.
The wolf, though, represents the two-sided nature of the characters. I want to mention that the wolf could also be Orthrus, the brother of Cerberus. Cerberus is the guardian of the underworld, as you might know, but Orthrus merely guards cattle. Either way, this could tie into something I'll bring up in a bit, but I don't think it really has any legs. So the owl's pretty easy to grasp, but what about that wolf? What's it saying about what's going on in this game? Well, focusing on that spiritual meaning, I think the wolf is primarily reflecting Max and Safi, but also one more person, and you might not expect this, Chloe. And of course, it applies to everyone, but primarily these three. They each have their positive traits and their share of harmful ones.
Wait, you snooped in my wallet?
Stop deflecting.
The following is a section from David Baum's 4 Rooms of Change. The link is in the description. From the Native American tradition comes a story about Wilma Mankiller, a great contemporary Native leader and former chief of the Cherokee Nation, who wore a choker around her neck with the heads of 2 wolves facing each other. This one, she said, pointing to one face, represents the voice of good that is inside of me. And this one, she said, pointing to the other, represents the voice of evil. They are always in an internal battle. Which one is winning? Asked the reporter. The one I feed the most. If we look at the first game with this lens, we have those moments of Max reflecting on the new side of Chloe, that angry, mean, manipulative side, one of the wolves, one that she now listens to, a side Max never knew. We can see it seep through even in episode 4, where alternate Chloe exhibits similar behavior to original Chloe after Max refuses to kill her. It was always there. We can look at all of the side characters and see the wolves. Vin has his pride and his shame, the act and the reality. Amanda has her compassion and her fragility. Gwen has her perseverance, but also her bitterness. Lucas has his family-oriented side and his narcissist side. Moses' second side is the true depth of his character, the one Max wasn't acquainted with while Safi was alive, or maybe his self-isolating depression. Okay, that was a lot, but now we're back to the bowling alley. After getting past the fallen shelves near the entrance, Safi says,
Talk about descending into the mouth of hell.
Later, she refers to the mascot, Neb, as a devil. On the floor, there's graffiti that says, Hail Satan. There's even bottles.
Oh no, bottles. This might be hell.
So yeah, the Nebula is hell, or at least a gateway to hell. This has interesting implications given the rest of the game. The Nebula's most prominent feature is the Nebula mobile that hangs above the lanes. Max goes into the building looking for her focus.
The loneliest thing you can find.
That focus ends up being the mobile.
It was made to be beautiful.
And now no one ever looks at it.
After Max gets her shot of the mobile, it crashes down from the ceiling, and Safi pulls Max out of harm's way. That scene ate at me for so long. There's so much packed into this one object, and it's not immediately apparent what it could be representing. But in Chapter 5, there's some extra details that could clue us into exactly what the nebula represents. In the storm during Chapter 5, we return to the nebula. Hang on, the door said, "Stay safe, see you soon." It knows? The nebula now holds Maya Okada's sakura tree in full bloom. The mobile lays in pieces on the ground in one world, the tree in its place in the other. The quote-unquote loneliest thing is now Maya's memorial tree. The other thing that gets replaced is the Neb statue. In its place is the Thomas Caledon statue. This implies that Thomas Caledon is also a devil. On its own, this doesn't really mean anything to us, but if we look in Max's journal, Safi in Caledon's place. Safi is a devil. Lucas stands beneath the tree, speaking words that are not his. Words that through his mouth become poison. They're Safi's words. Poems about what he did to Maya. We can interpret the tree's loneliness as a few things. The loneliness of death, of grief, or of being exploited. Death in the erasure, grief, the distance it creates, and exploitation, the crushing isolation it instills. Maya's loneliness is in death, Safi's in grief, and both in abuse. Keep in mind that these meanings also retroactively apply to the mobile. Another important detail regarding the tree is that it's in the nebula. It's resting in hell, in emotional hell, so to speak. This makes me think about the characters that are present there. Lucas, Loretta, Reggie, and Vin. Lucas is in hell for obvious reasons, but why the other three? Loretta seems to have something like OCD. If you know of a more accurate thing to describe it, then please let me know, but that's the best guess I can make. But she can't stand when things don't make sense. She also has a habit of overstepping boundaries, but it's not like she's a truly bad person like Lucas is. That obsession though, the need for control, could be Loretta's torment. Reggie has immense self-doubt, and pretty much every part of his life is insecure. No stable relationships, no confidence in his ability, and no family to lean on. Reggie's father is homophobic. Given the storm's nightmarish nature and its proclivity to exploit people's fears, Reggie could be in quote-unquote hell due to his Christian family instilling that fear into him. Regardless, Reggie is tormented by himself. Vin is the other character here. He's been hating himself for ages for what he's done for Yasmin, and what he's done to Maya. He feels immense shame for his actions, but feels like he's in a position he can't let go. Vin's also been stuck on Safi. He can't get over her, and probably can't live with her hating him. So Vin is tormented by guilt. This location is also where Max is forced to relive part of her trauma from the dark room. It's something she's never gotten over, which, yeah, fair. So that reinforces that idea that this hell has something to do with an unending torment of some kind. In that moment, her mind combines Jefferson and Lucas, drawing a parallel between Maya and Max, victims to the male teachers and artists that they looked up to.
I had a friend in undergrad who was obsessed with this building. She never broke in, though. She clearly wasn't as crazy as you.
This is an interesting detail. Maya wanted to see the gates of hell, but never did. She wasn't brave enough, or wasn't broken enough. Max, however, can look death in the face, and Maya does eventually get inside of the nebula in the form of her tree. I feel pretty confident that this is meant to draw a stronger parallel between Maya and Max. Also, in Chapter 5, Max walks through similar yet different motel rooms that she, and possibly Chloe, stayed in during her travels around America. As she walks through the rooms, the color fades. She grows more and more fatigued, until eventually she must lay down to rest. In each of the rooms, we can see the cover of a book, bluntly reflecting the troubles of Max during that time in her life. At the same time, the TV plays surprisingly pointed audio clips. If Chloe died, it's all about grief. If she lived, it's about discovering that someone isn't who you thought they were. If Chloe's dead, this theme is still present, but not exactly in the same way. The scene is punctuated by the heaviest of storms, which is also reflecting on Max's relationship with Chloe in Arcadia Bay. Primarily, we can look at these lyrics.
We got older, days went by. Weather's changed since then, so have I. Been a while now, yeah, it's been some time. Do you know now your fall is mine?
When Max lays down, she laments.
It's the problem with moving around so much. All these rooms really do start to blend together after a while. One big, amorphous blob of motels. Like some kind of nebula.
This gets a little confusing since there's essentially two separate nebulas. There's the location, the portal to hell, and also the object, the mobile, the loneliest thing. Either way, Max connecting her time moving between motels to a nebula ultimately is just emphasizing the misery in that period of her life. The motels are like hell, or they're crushingly lonely and surrounded by painful memories. This is the moment Double Exposure got me, with this scene in the motels. That's when I knew there was something to uncover here. There's even more to the nebula though. There's the fact that Safi saved Max when it fell. She pulled her out of loneliness. But also that the nebula could represent Max herself, and it could represent Maya, and it could represent Safi. They're uniquely lonely. This leads me to inquire even further. This video is sponsored by Nebula. No, but could you imagine? In chapter 1, Max, Safi, and Moses observe the Geminids, a meteor shower spawning from 3200 Phaethon. This asteroid is unique because its orbit gets the closest to the sun of any other. Although that's only brief, because its complete orbit goes far away and doesn't come back for about a year. More than that, both namesakes are relevant to the game. Moses and Safi's mural in his office is of the Gemini twins over the Gemini constellation, which is where the Geminids name comes from. The mural represents the two of them. Phaethon, as Safi points out, was killed by Zeus after his disastrous first and only chariot ride. Safi says, "Who doesn't love a good smiting?" foreshadowing her vengeful streak. While watching the meteor shower, Safi asks,
So should we be worried about this crazy asteroid hitting Earth?
So naturally, I ask, who's the asteroid? The answer is actually pretty obvious. It's Safi. If Max is the sun, then Safi is Phaethon, coming closer than anyone else before disappearing. Moses also says the asteroid would probably burn up before it ever hits the surface of Earth, which could be in reference to Safi's self-destructive tendencies. The should we be concerned question draws attention to Max's main dilemma when it comes to Safi. Does she tolerate the negative traits, the harmful behavior, and the pain from her best friend? Or does she let go? Later, Safi comments on the poetic nature of the moon. She refers to a quote by Carl Sandburg, where he describes the moon as a friend for the lonesome to talk to. This is the only strong meaning given to the moon by the game. So, who's that friend? Who's the moon? We could say it's either Max or Safi, depending on whose perspective we're looking through, but I think it could also be Amanda. If Max is a star forming a nebula, then Amanda is a moon in orbit. Plus, there's the line about moonlighting. This is a pretty loose connection, I know that. The moon symbology isn't really ever expanded much or referred to again, but it's something I speculated on a little bit. I think Max is a moon to Safi, a star to Amanda, and vice versa. Following that same line of thinking, Moses could also be the moon. I think that would more so apply to Safi than Max. I guess the moon could represent any relationship really, but Amanda technically has the most evidence.
She's just so hot.
Oh, and you know what else is said about Max in that scene at the turtle?
You are a literal angel.
Absolute cinema. What can I say? To Max, the nebula is truly the gateway to hell. It's the beginning of the end.
Welcome to hell.
From this point forth, she spirals downward up until the storm, which may in some way be hell itself, or purgatory, perhaps. Max's hell goes even deeper, though. In the Fine Arts Building, Max has a small exhibition of some of her photos. One of these, Jonah, features a whale in a triptych, with one end being a sign and the other the end of a tunnel. Between both ends of the whale is a car, locked onto a track leading towards the whale's mouth. The name is a reference to the book of Jonah, which is about repentance and forgiveness. Jonah is a prophet. In the story, he's in the belly of a fish for 3 days before re-emerging, so the car is Jonah. When Jonah is released, he accepts his mission from God that he first ran away from. When Jonah comes back from the sea, he returns to the mission. Just like how when Max is released from her hell, the time after Arcadia Bay, she's thrown back into fate's whims with Safi's death. However, Jonah continues to deny God. He hates that God shows forgiveness to his enemies. Jonah never resolves this. Instead, God simply asks him, shouldn't I? So maybe Jonah is truly Safi, vengeful to the end. This also might imply that Max is God, though. So teach me
Miss Caulfield?
In Christianity, Jesus remarks that he will return with the mark of Jonah. Safi is the one who dies and is resurrected. Her coat is white, plus she loves to spread out her arms before Max shoots her. The mark of Jonah here could be Safi's resurrection, so to speak. Or it could be Max's influence, the knowledge of others like herself, Max's story of running away. I think the illusion is focusing specifically on that one moment though. Running away, going through hell, and then acceptance.
What's that saying? If you're going through hell, keep going.
It could be reflecting Max. Max ran away after Arcadia Bay, but in Double Exposure, the keeping going is her determination to fix everything. Still running in a sense, but in a more active way than before. This part of her is reflected with the song Spectator up on the Overlook.
I am the spectator, I am the middleman, thinking for everyone, watching you both take out your fear on me. How can I help you if it's best for me to stay away? I am caught in between, feeling the feelings of everyone except my own.
I want to help you, Chloe, but I think my help is hurting.
This is similarly reflected later in Chapter 1 outside of the science building. There's a statue of Copernicus. He's the guy who is credited for first theorizing the solar system was heliocentric, meaning everything orbits the sun. The Copernicus statue is paired with a second one of Atlas, a figure from Greek mythology who holds the weight of the world on his shoulders. That's where the owl first appears on the Atlas statue. You could see where I'm going with this. Max is like Atlas. She carries all of her pain alone. Heliocentrism is important because that's how Max feels about herself. She's the center of everything. She's responsible for it all, which is emphasized by the blackout just after she takes a photo of the owl.
I caused this! I caused all of this!
Max puts everything on herself, and she deals with it alone. She is the center of the nebula, and she is holding it all together. Max has a short look prompt in Chapter 1. Looking at some debris, Max comments,
If a roof collapses in a bowling alley and no one is around to hear it.
So obviously Max is referencing the classic, if a tree falls and no one is around to hear it question, but what's that telling us? It's about the characters. If they are suffering and nobody knows it, how can they be helped? That's what Max learns by the end, and what Safi ends up misinterpreting. I should point out Safi's response to Max with this prompt.
Can you still collect the insurance money?
It's about taking advantage of that damage. Perhaps her scorn relating to Maya or herself, a subtle nod towards Lucas and her mom by the text, before we're ever privy to it. It might also be reflecting some aspect of herself, but I'm not too sure of that as of yet. What's important is that both Max and Safi are molded by the bad experiences in their pasts. We see throughout the game how these things have affected them, and how they motivate them. They both channel their trauma into their art, they fixate on old connections, and they both have powers. The Nebula is trauma, it's loneliness, it's grief, it's depression, it's Max, it's Safi, it's Maya, and it's hell. This is what makes me disagree with people saying this game is lazy. This is almost certainly intentional, and it's all so relevant and resonates so strongly throughout the game. So much of the dialogue is incredibly efficient and pointed. The world is constructed to perfectly punctuate every emotion. Everything works together so elegantly despite its subtlety. As pretentious as it might seem, this is how the game operates. Not through the literal events, but in how those reflect the characters and themes. The why and how are not important, just the what. What is it? What happened? And what does that say about everything else? As Schnee quoted in his video,
the what obliterates the why.
Ask good questions and you will be rewarded.
I can tell you that it's meant to test a key Abraxas virtue. The eye for detail.
So, that's part 1. There's a lot of things that I left out, so don't think by any means that I covered absolutely everything the Nebula has to offer. There's lots of stuff left to uncover if you're interested. I haven't decided what I'll cover next, but it'll probably be some of Max's core relationships. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll be there for the next one. Like and subscribe, or whatever, I don't care. Oh, and listen to my music.